There's been a lot of talk recently over cryptos and NFTs, how they're gonna usher in a new decentralized world like never seen before. I want to say I believe in these technologies. I love cryptocurrency. I love NFT. I love the especially the technology underneath. And I love that aspect of it. But I don't think it's gonna bring in a decentralized world. Though the underneath platform will be decentralized, but who's running the platform? Who's going to be running tomorrow's platforms? If you just look at it, over half of the cryptocurrency around is of two coins, Ether and Bitcoin. Bitcoin being significantly larger than Ether as well right now. So that doesn't sound decentralized. Out of the exchanges, they sell decentralized coins, tokens, whatever you want to really call them, but they still are centralized. There's still essentially a single point of failure of that one company, and you've seen that with companies like Mt. Gox and BitConnect. When problems have occurred, sometimes the problems have occurred due to technical issues, sometimes they've occurred because of actual fraud, but they've occurred. Most of the cryptocurrency, most of the NFT stuff is still being handled by a few select companies. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think people should understand that if they think just because something's NFT or crypto or something like that, that it's just inherently 100% decentralized, it's not the case. Look at NFT, OpenSea being the biggest exchange. Got nothing wrong with OpenSea. Seemed like a fine exchange, but that's still technically a centralized e-commerce platform. The same things were said about the web in the 90s and computers. It's going to usher in a new era. And yes, it did. And that it will, obviously the words decentralization really weren't used, but similar words were used. They talked about how you'll bring power back to creators, especially with stuff like the App Store. So let's talk about the App Store. And when Apple launched the App Store in 08, 07 was the iPhone launch, it did really well. And yes, a bunch of small companies or small individuals did create some apps that did really well. But you know what happened? They either became the big players or the big players stepped in. So if you look now, the majority of the downloads come from a select few big players. That's all it is. And yet it allowed virtually anyone with little barrier to entry to get in, which is essentially what kind of the ethos of what decentralization in terms of cryptocurrencies and NFT allow. But at the end of the day, people didn't think it would happen with the App Store, but it did. A few big players came in, or a few big players emerged, and this is what will happen now. The question is it going to be the old players that just get in and they just dominate, or is it just going to be totally new players that we've not heard of and that will become the Amazons and Google of tomorrow? I think it'll be a mixture, and it usually is a mixture. I think the problem with the existing players is even if they try and do it, and people will say, oh, they were too slow to adapt, but even if they try, people will actually hate on them. What will happen is you've got some game companies that have announced, let's say, their future games going to support NFTs. Don't get me wrong, with stuff like loot crates and in-app purchases, there's definitely a history of companies going like crazy in terms of trying to make money but not really providing much content and much benefit to the end user. But because of stuff like that, it means that if a big company tries to do something with a new technology like NFTs, like they say we're going to integrate into our existing platform, into our existing game, and even if they're trying to do it the right way, people backlash against it, and those companies a lot of times just reverse it because it's too much hassle. It might hurt their core business, even though they probably should actually push through. Whereas let's say a smaller company, if they do it, it's a totally different story. They're called innovators. They're called this is somebody who disrupts the industry, etc., etc. If take Amazon for example, if Amazon does something now, it will just be called a new money making scheme. Might be the case, might not be. But if they did 20 years ago, they'll be called innovators. They'll be called industry leaders, trendsetters, whatever. So that's my little 5 or so minutes I was going to try and do it in 1 minute, but I just kept talking, and there was a lot to say on this. But it's very important to realize that just because the underlying technology is decentralized, who is going to be on the creating the platforms? Yes, anyone might be able to create some platform, but anyone can create a website, but it doesn't really mean that your website's going to be popular Same with cryptocurrencies. Same with NFT content. It's going to get centralized in a few certain areas. I'm very confident that. I mean, that is unfortunate, but that's how it is. Same with like voting in the real world. Yes, everyone can vote. Yes, everyone can have a say. But then what ends up happening is one person with one party comes in as a result of the voting, and they're the centralized power. Then obviously there's more extreme cases of it in certain dictatorships, but it is essentially the same principle. Yeah, I'm rambling on about economics and politics and philosophy now, but if you would like to hear more content about hear stuff like this and see more content like this, let me know, and I'll see you in the next short video probably next time. Bye bye.